Hello, everyone. My name is Grace, and I'm 65 years old. 2 weeks ago, I buried my beloved husband, Jack, after 38 years of marriage. He died of a heart attack at age 67. Last Saturday, I attended my nephew Noah's first birthday party at my sister Elaine's house. That's when Elaine stood up and stunned everyone. She announced that Noah was actually Jack's son, waving around what she claimed was his last will. She demanded half of our $800,000 home as Noah's inheritance. I almost choked on my cake trying not to laugh out loud. You see, there was something Elaine didn't know about Jack. I'll explain it all. First, let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're tuning from in the comments. We could give you a shout-out in our next video. Today's special shout-out goes to Ava Reed from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for being part of our community. Now, let me explain it all. Jack and I first met 40 years ago at our local church bake sale. I was selling my well-known apple pies when he approached my table. He bought 3 entire pies, claiming they were for his mother, but later admitted he just wanted an excuse to talk to me. "These smell like heaven," he said with the warmest smile. "Just like the baker." That was Jack, charming and kind to everyone he met. Our first date was the very next night at Miller's Diner downtown. We talked until the restaurant closed, trading stories about our families and hopes. Jack worked as a school principal dedicated to helping children learn and grow. He remembered every student's name and always asked about their families. 2 years later, he proposed during our church's Christmas Mass right there in front of everyone. The whole congregation began clapping and cheering. We married the next spring in that same small church, surrounded by friends and family who had watched our love story grow. We bought our first home together after our second anniversary. It was a snug 2-story house on Maple Street for $200,000, which felt like a fortune back then. Jack had just been promoted to superintendent, and I was teaching 3rd grade at the elementary school. The house had a large backyard with an old oak tree, ideal for a tire swing. We spent weekends painting rooms and planting flowers, dreaming of the children who would someday laugh in that yard under the oak tree's shade. But those children never came, no matter how much we wished and prayed. For 10 hard years, we visited doctors and tried everything they suggested. We saved money for costly treatments and followed every piece of advice. I clearly remember our last doctor's visit. Sitting in that chilly waiting room holding Jack's hand, the doctor told us that having children might not be possible for us. The drive home was wordless. Both of us lost in our own thoughts and shattered dreams. That evening, Jack took my hands and said, "Grace, we have each other, and that's more than many people ever get. Our love is enough to fill any house." He meant every word. We slowly learned to find joy in new ways. We traveled to places we'd ever seen in magazines. We became the go-to aunt and uncle to all our nieces and nephews. Jack poured his heart into his students, treating each one like his own child. Our home became the hub for holidays and celebrations. My younger sister, Elaine, was always the theatrical one in our family. 3 years younger than me at 62, she had constantly lived life like she was on stage. While I was teaching and Jack was working with schools, Elaine jumped from job to job and man to man. Our parents worried about her constantly, nonstop sending her money when she got into trouble. Elaine and I had a complicated relationship growing up. She was pretty and bubbly, the kind of person everyone noticed when she walked into a room. But she often seemed jealous of what I had. If I got a new dress, Elaine needed a better one. When Jack and I bought our house, Elaine complained for months about her tiny apartment until our parents helped her move somewhere nicer. When I got promoted at school, Elaine suddenly decided she wanted to be a teacher too. Though she never butt through, it was tiring, but Jack always encouraged me to be patient with her. "She's your one sister," he would remind me. "Family forgives family." 5 years ago, Elaine started dating Victor, a mechanic she met at a bar. Victor was handsome in a rough way, with oil-stained hands and a pickup truck our parents didn't approve of. Their relationship was like a soap opera with loud fights followed by passionate makeups. Then came the shock pregnancy announcement at Easter dinner 3 years ago. Elaine had never wanted children, often saying kids would wreck her figure and her freedom. Yet there she was dramatically announcing she was going to be a mother while pretend crying into her napkin. I felt a familiar pang of sadness mixed with joy. After all our struggles and heartbreak, Elaine had accidentally gotten what Jack and I had desperately wanted for years. But I pushed those resentful feelings away and focused on being happy for her. I was set to be the best aunt possible to this little one. Noah was born healthy at 7 even. I was right there at the hospital with flowers and a handmade baby quilt I'd spent months crocheting. Elaine seemed overwhelmed by being a mom from day one, calling me almost daily in tears about feeding issues or sleepless nights. I helped as much as I could, often babysitting Noah overnight so Elaine could rest. I loved spending time with that sweet baby, rocking him to sleep and singing lullabies. Jack was more distant with Noah than I expected. Looking back now, I assumed it was because being around a baby reminded him of our own lost dreams. He was always polite when Elaine brought Noah over for visits, but he kept his distance. I didn't question it at the time, thinking he just needed space to heal from our own heartaches. Then came that awful Monday morning 3 weeks ago. Jack woke up complaining of chest pains and shortness of breath. I pleaded with him to let me drive him to the hospital, but he insisted it was just indigestion from the spicy dinner we'd had the night before. "I'll be okay, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "Just need some fresh air." Those were the last words he said to me. A neighbor found him collapsed in our yard an hour later. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was already gone. The doctors said it was a major heart attack. At 67, my Jack was gone. The days that followed were a whirl of funeral arrangements and visitors. Elaine was strangely absent during most of the planning, claiming Noah had a fever or she couldn't find anyone to watch him. When she did show up to the funeral service, she sat in the back and left before the family dinner at our house. I was too consumed with grief to think much about her behavior at the time. I just assumed she was wrestling with her own sadness about losing Jack, who had been like a big brother to her for so many years. A week after we buried Jack, Noah's first birthday arrived. The last thing I wanted to do was pretend to be happy at a kid's party, but family duty called to me. "Jack would want you to go." My neighbor, Mrs. Torres, reminded me during one of her daily visits with casseroles. He always said, "Family comes first, even when it's hard." So I found myself driving to Elaine's rented duplex across town with a wrapped gift in my passenger seat and fatigue weighing down my shoulders. I hadn't slept properly since Jack died, spending late nights staring at his empty pillow and listening for footsteps that would never come again. I parked behind several cars I didn't recognize and took deep breaths before grabbing Noah's gift and walking to the front door. No one should have to fake happiness just 2 weeks after burying their husband, I thought. But I put on a steady smile and rang the doorbell. Elaine's friend Maya answered, her face showing surprise when she saw me. "Oh, Grace, you actually came?" she said nervously, glancing over her shoulder. "Everyone's in the backyard." The small house was decorated with bright balloons and streamers everywhere. A large banner reading, "Happy First Birthday, Noah," was stretched across the living room. I spotted a group of people I'd never seen before gathered in the kitchen, whispering softly among themselves. They stopped talking immediately when I walked by, their eyes following me like I was some kind of spectacle. In the backyard, more strangers milled around holding plastic cups and paper plates. I found my parents sitting uneasily at a folding table, looking very uncomfortable and out of place. My father stood up when he saw me, relief spreading across his weathered face. "Grace," he said, hugging me tightly. "We weren't sure you'd make it today." "Of course I came," I replied, placing Noah's gift on the present table. "Where's the birthday boy with Elaine inside?" my mother said, not meeting my eyes directly. "They should be out any minute for the cake-cutting ceremony." I walked around stiffly, accepting sympathy about Jack's death and sidestepping questions about how I was coping. Everyone seemed nervous, conversations going silent when I got close enough to hear. I figured people just didn't know how to act around someone who'd newly become a widow. After about 30 minutes of uncomfortable small talk, Elaine finally emerged from the house carrying Noah on her hip. She was wearing a brand new dress I'd never seen before, and her hair looked like she'd just come from an upscale salon. Noah looked adorable in a tiny suit and bow tie, his chubby arms grabbing for all the attention. Elaine barely looked at me as she placed Noah in his decorated high chair for photos. She seemed unusually confident, almost excited, moving around the yard like she owned the world. She picked up a plastic spoon and tapped it against her drink cup, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Noah's special first birthday," she began, her voice carrying across the entire backyard. "This past year has brought so many changes and surprises to our family." The guests exchanged worried glances. My mother suddenly became very interested in studying her shoes. Something felt very wrong in the air. "I've been keeping a big secret," Elaine continued dramatically, placing her hand on Noah's head like she was blessing him. "One that I can't hide anymore, especially after what happened to Jack." A cold chill ran down my spine despite the warm afternoon sun. Something terrible was about to happen. "Noah isn't Victor's son," she announced loudly, her eyes finding mine across the crowded yard. "He belongs to Jack. Grace's husband and I had a secret relationship 2 years ago." The world seemed to stop spinning around me. I heard gasps and whispers from the other guests, felt my father go rigid beside me, but everything sounded like it was underwater. "Jack and I fell in love during a difficult time in his marriage," Elaine continued with rehearsed confidence. "We never meant for it to happen, but Noah is the result of our love affair." I stood there frozen, unable to process the lies coming out of my sister's mouth. She was claiming she had slept with my Jack, that little Noah was his child instead of Victor's. It was so ridiculous that I almost started laughing right there. But Elaine wasn't finished destroying my husband's memory. She reached into her purse and pulled out what looked like an official document. Jack knew the truth about Noah being his son. Right before he died, he changed his will to provide for his child. She waved the paper in the air like a victory flag. "This legal document states that half of the house Jack shared with Grace should go to Noah as his biological father's heir." Every single person at that party turned to stare at me, waiting for my reaction. I could see the pity, the curiosity, and the discomfort on their faces. My parents looked absolutely horrified. My father was half standing like he might need to catch me if I fainted. And then, to everyone's complete surprise, including my own, I felt a smile trying to form on my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so completely absurd that it becomes funny. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the inappropriate laughter bubbling up inside my chest like champagne. "Oh, I see," I said finally, my voice surprisingly even and steady. I took a sip of lemonade to buy myself time and pushed down the urge to laugh in Elaine's brazen face. "May I take a look at this will, Elaine?" Her confident expression wavered just slightly. She clearly hadn't expected such a calm reaction from me. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document, a single typed page with what appeared to be Jack's signature at the bottom. I looked it over quickly, noticing glaring mistakes immediately. The language was completely wrong. Nothing like the legal papers Jack brought home from his lawyer's office over the years. And the signature, while it looked similar to Jack's at first glance, was clearly fake. The way he always made his H was completely different, and the curve of his Y was wrong. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back to her with a polite smile. "Thank you for showing me this, Elaine. I think I need to head home now." "That's it?" Elaine asked, confusion clear in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else about this?" "Not right now," I replied calmly, picking up my purse from the table. "This is Noah's special day. We can discuss this privately later if needed." I said goodbye to my shocked parents, promising to call them soon to explain everything. As I walked to my car, I could hear the worried whispers starting behind me. The happy party atmosphere was completely ruined now. Once I was safely inside my car and out of everyone's sight, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape all afternoon. It started small and quiet, then grew bigger until tears were streaming down my cheeks. Not tears of joy or sadness, but a strange mixture of grief, anger, and complete disbelief at my sister's terrible lies. Because there was something very important that Elaine didn't know about Jack and me. Something we had never told anyone in our family. Something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful and wrong, but completely impossible. The real truth about Jack began 4 years ago, long before Noah was even born. Jack had been having health problems for months, something he tried to hide from me at first. He was too proud to admit when he wasn't feeling well. Finally, I convinced him to see Dr. Hughes, our family doctor for over 20 years. After several tests and appointments, Dr. Hughes referred Jack to a specialist in the city. The diagnosis was prostate cancer, caught early but requiring immediate treatment. The surgery was scheduled for the following month, and we were both scared but hopeful. The operation went better than expected, Dr. Sandoval told us afterwards. Jack's recovery was smooth and the cancer was completely removed, but there was a side effect we hadn't fully considered beforehand. The type of surgery Jack needed would make it impossible for him to father children ever again. It was a medical fact clearly documented in all his medical records. The surgery happened 3 years before Noah was conceived, making it absolutely impossible for Jack to be anyone's father after that point. We kept Jack's cancer diagnosis private, just between us and our doctors. After decades of people asking nosy questions about why we never had children, we had learned to keep our medical business to ourselves. Only Jack, myself, and his medical team knew about the surgery and its effects. Even my parents didn't know their son-in-law had battled cancer and won. Jack was embarrassed about the whole situation and preferred to keep it quiet, which I completely understood and respected. After Jack's surgery, as he was recovering at home, he made a comment that seemed paranoid at the time, but now made perfect sense. "Elaine's been acting strange lately," he said one afternoon while resting in his favorite chair. "She keeps asking personal questions about our marriage and finances. I have a feeling she might try something crazy one day." I had laughed it off, thinking he was just worried because of his illness. But Jack was more serious than I realized. The next week, he asked me to drive him to see his lawyer. Mr. Dalton had handled Jack's legal affairs for 15 years, including our house purchase and various financial matters. I sat with Jack as he explained Elaine's increasingly odd behavior and his recent medical situation. Mr. Dalton listened carefully, taking notes about everything Jack told him. "I recommend we document all of this," Mr. Dalton advised. "Medical records, any strange conversations with Elaine, even emails or text messages. You never know what might become important later." We followed his guidance completely, creating a thorough file of everything related to the situation. Jack also updated his real will through proper legal channels, making sure I would inherit everything if something happened to him. Mr. Dalton kept official copies of all the documents, and we placed our copies in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, just to be extra careful. "Hopefully, we'll never need any of this," Jack said as we locked the box, "but I want you protected if Elaine ever tries anything foolish." The morning after Noah's birthday party mess, I drove straight to the bank as soon as it opened. Mrs. Whitman, the bank manager who had known Jack and me for decades, offered her condolences as she guided me to the safety deposit box area. I sat alone in the small quiet room and opened the metal box Jack and I had filled with what he called our insurance policy. Inside was everything I needed to prove Elaine's lies were entirely false. Jack's real will duly signed and witnessed, leaving everything to me. Medical records plainly showing his surgery and its effects, making fatherhood impossible after that date. A careful journal Jack had kept, documenting every odd conversation and encounter with Elaine over the past few years. Printed copies of text messages Elaine had sent to Jack, asking improper questions about our marriage and money. A letter from Mr. Dalton attesting he had witnessed Jack's lawful will and could verify its validity in court if necessary. And at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name, written in Jack's neat handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened the letter and read Jack's last words to me. "My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, something has happened to me and you've needed these documents. I pray it's many years from now and Elaine has grown out of her self-centered ways. But if not, if she's tried to hurt you when I'm not there to protect you, use everything in this box to defend yourself. I know how much you love family, how you always see the good in people, but you deserve safeguards from those who would take advantage of your kind heart. I love you more than words can express, more than time can measure. Whatever happens, remember that always, Jack." Tears poured down my face as I read his words, feeling his love and protection reaching across from heaven to help me. My wonderful, thoughtful husband had seen this coming somehow. Maybe not the exact details, but he knew Elaine might try touse his death for her own gain. I carefully returned most items to the box, keeping only what I needed as evidence. Then I called Mr. Dalton's office and made an appointment for that same afternoon. Dalton and Associate occupied the third floor of an old brick building downtown, the kind of place that felt solid and reliable. I had only been there a few times with Jack, but the receptionist remembered me right away. "Mrs. Miller," she said warmly, standing to greet me. "Mr. Dalton is waiting for you. Please accept our deepest condolences for your loss." Mr. Dalton was in his 70s with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had been Jack's friend as well as his lawyer, and they often talked about fishing and baseball during their appointments. He stood when I entered, coming around his big wooden desk to give me a warm hug. "Grace," he said softly, gesturing for me to sit in the comfortable chair across from his desk. I was devastated to hear about Jack. He was truly one of the finest men I've ever known. "He was," I agreed, my voice catching with emotion. "And it seems he was right about planning for trouble with Elaine." I explained everything that had happened at Noah's birthday party, showing him the fake will Elaine had waved around like a weapon. Mr. Dalton examined it closely through his reading glasses, his expression growing more serious with each line he read. "This is a blatant forgery," he said finally, setting it down on his desk. "The legal language is totally wrong, and the signature wouldn't fool anyone who knew Jack's real handwriting. But the fact that she created this document at all is deeply troubling." I showed him all the documents from our safety deposit box, the medical records proving Jack couldn't have fathered any children, the legitimate will, and Jack's journal documenting Elaine's odd behavior over the years. "Jack was remarkably thorough," Mr. Dalton said, reviewing everything closely. "Truly, these medical records alone completely disprove Elaine's claim about Noah's parentage. The surgery was performed 3 years before the child was born. It would be medically impossible for Jack to be the father." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't want to humiliate Elaine publicly, but I can't let her snatch half of our home based on lies." Mr. Dalton leaned back in his leather chair, weighing things carefully. "First, we need more information about Elaine's current situation. I recommend hiring a private investigator to learn why she's doing this. People don't usually attempt fraud without being desperate about something." He recommended Patricia Caney, a former police officer who now worked as a private investigator, often helping with cases for the law firm. I agreed immediately, and Mr. Dalton called Patricia right from his office, explaining the basic situation without going into too much detail. Patricia arrived within an hour, a professional-looking woman with short gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She took careful notes as I explained Elaine's lies and the fake will, asking detailed questions about my sister's job history, relationships, and financial situation. I realized I knew very little about Elaine's current circumstances. Despite being family, we had grown apart over the past few years, especially after Noah's birth. My attempts to help with babysitting and family visits were often met with excuses or last-minute cancellations. "I'll need about a week to gather information," Patricia said when I had finished telling her everything I knew. "My first focus will be on her finances and her relationship with Noah's real father. Can you tell me anything else about this Victor person?" I shared what little I remembered about Victor, the mechanic, how Elaine had met him at a bar, and their stormy relationship. I mentioned that Victor hadn't been at Noah's birthday party, which seemed odd for the child's father. "That's definitely worth investigating," Patricia said, making another note in her small notebook. "I'll be in touch soon with what I find." 1 week later, Patricia called, asking to meet at Mr. Dalton's office again. When I arrived, both Patricia and Mr. Dalton were sitting at the conference table with folders and papers spread out between them. "Mrs. Miller," Patricia began once I was seated, "I've discovered some very alarming information about your sister's situation." According to Patricia's investigation, Elaine was in serious financial trouble. She owed over $90,000 spread across multiple credit cards, medical bills for Noah's emergency surgery last year, and various personal loans. Her credit was awful, and she had been turned down for consolidation loans at 3 different banks in the past 2 months. She's also facing eviction, Patricia continued, sliding a document across the table to me. This is a copy of the legal notice her landlord filed. She has until next Friday to pay 5 months of back rent or be forced to move out. As for Victor, he had apparently left Elaine and Noah right after the baby's first few months, moving to Florida with a woman he met online. He was supposed to pay child support but rarely sent money, about $150 once or twice since he left. Patricia had also found something else troubling. I discovered these text messages, she said, producing printed copies. These are conversations between Elaine and her friend Maya from the party. They show she's been planning this scheme for weeks. The messages were shocking to read. Jack's death might be the answer to my prayers, one message read. That house is worth at least $800,000 now. If I can convince everyone Noah is Jack's son, I'll get half of everything. The fake will looks perfect. My friend Dave, who does graphic design, helped me make it using Jack's signature from an old Christmas card. Grace has always had everything handed to her. It's time for me to get what I deserve. She had 38 years with a wonderful husband. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. Reading Elaine's cold, calculating words made me feel nauseated. This wasn't just desperation or poor judgment. She had planned this cruel deception for weeks, deciding to use my grief and Jack's death for her own financial gain. There's more, Patricia said gently, seeing how upset I was. I also looked into Victor Hale's background. He has arrest records for assault and battery from 2 previous relationships. And there's currently a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in Georgia. He's not someone you'd want around any child, let alone little Noah. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process everything I had learned. My sister wasn't just lying about Jack and Noah. She was willing to destroy my husband's reputation and our marriage's memory to solve her money problems. And her choice in men had potentially put innocent Noah in danger with an abusive father. What are my options now? I asked, looking between Patricia and Mr. Dalton. I can't just let this situation continue. But I don't want to hurt Noah. He's still my nephew, and I love him. Mr. Dalton removed his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. You have several choices, Grace. We could file criminal charges against Elaine for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. Given the amount of money involved, she could face serious jail time if convicted. Or, he continued, noticing my distressed expression, we could handle this privately, confront her with all our evidence, demand she retract her lies, and possibly work out some kind of arrangement that helps Noah while holding Elaine accountable for her actions. I left that meeting with a heavy heart and a briefcase full of evidence. That evening, I called Dr. Nora Ellis, the counselor I had been seeing since Jack's death, and scheduled an emergency appointment. In her peaceful office filled with plants and soft lighting, I poured out the entire horrible situation. I'm so angry I can barely think straight, I admitted to Dr. Ellis. But Noah is just an innocent baby caught in the middle of his mother's lies. And despite everything, Elaine is still my sister. Dr. Ellis listened patiently, occasionally asking questions about my relationship with Elaine throughout our lives. It sounds like this pattern of jealousy and manipulation has existed since you were children, she observed thoughtfully. What Elaine is doing now is an escalation, but not completely out of character based on what you've told me. What would you do in my situation? I asked desperately. I can't just let her get away with this, but I don't want to destroy our family completely. Elaine watched me nervously, clearly expecting the worst possible outcome. I could press criminal charges against you, I said finally. What you did was illegal fraud, not to mention cruel and heartless. You tried to cash in on my grief. She nodded miserably. I know it was wrong. I'm a terrible person and an even worse sister. But that would hurt Noah, I continued. And despite everything you've done, he's still my nephew and I love him. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly into my eyes. So here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to tell everyone the complete truth. That you lied about Jack having an affair, that Noah is Victor's son, and that you forged the will to try to steal half my house. You'll apologize publicly to me and to Jack's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small and defeated. Noah and I will still be homeless. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement that you'll never attempt anything like this again. I'll help you and Noah get back on your feet. Not by giving you half my house, but by paying off your debts and helping you find stable housing and employment. Her eyes widened in shock. Why would you do that after what I tried to do to you? Not for you, I said honestly. For Noah, and because Jack would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. But there will be strict conditions. I laid out my requirements. Elaine would enter counseling for her emotional problems and financial counseling to learn money management. She would maintain steady employment and allow me regular visits with Noah to ensure he was being properly cared for. If she violated any of these conditions, all support would stop immediately. Elaine was quiet for several minutes, processing everything I had said. I don't deserve your help or your kindness, she finally whispered. No, I agreed. You don't. But Noah deserves a stable home and proper care, and I deserve to have Jack's memory remain untarnished by your lies. This solution gives us both what we actually need. After working out more details, Elaine agreed to all my terms. We would meet with Mr. Dalton the following day to put everything in writing legally, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner that weekend. As I walked her to the door, she paused with her hand on the doorknob. I really am sorry, Grace. I've been jealous of you my entire life. Everything always seemed so perfect in your world. Nothing about my life has been perfect, I replied firmly. Jack and I struggled with infertility for years. He battled cancer. We faced challenges you never bothered to notice because you were too busy resenting what you imagined we had. Maybe it's time you started looking at reality instead of your jealous fantasies. The family dinner I organized for the following Saturday was tense from the moment everyone arrived. My parents came early, bringing their famous pot roast as an attempt to make things normal. We don't understand what this meeting is about, my mother said, as she arranged flowers on my dining room table. Elaine has been calling us crying, saying you're forcing her to come to some kind of confrontation. Just wait until everyone is here, I replied, pouring coffee. This needs to be addressed once and for all with everyone present to hear the truth. By 6:30, we were all seated around Jack's favorite table. My parents, Elaine without Noah, who was staying with a babysitter, and me, Mr. Dalton, had advised recording this conversation as well. So, a small device sat openly in the center of the table. Thank you all for coming. I began after explaining why we were recording. I've asked Elaine to share some very important information with the family. Elaine, my sister, looked pale and nervous, nothing like the confident woman who had made her dramatic announcement at Noah's party. She stared at her plate as she spoke in a voice barely louder than a whisper. I lied about Noah being Jack's son, she said. Jack and I never had any kind of affair or romantic relationship. Noah is Victor's child, and I created a fake will to try to steal half of Grace's house. My parents stared at her in complete shock and horror. But why would you do such a terrible thing? My father demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. Do you have any idea what that announcement did to your sister? What it did to Jack's reputation and memory? Elaine explained her desperate financial situation in more detail. The crushing debt, Victor's abandonment, the eviction notice, and her panic about becoming homeless with a sick child. As she talked, I watched my mother's expression change from shock to sympathy, just as I had expected. Oh, sweetie, my mother said when Elaine finished. Why didn't you just come to us for help? We could have worked something out. You didn't need to make up such horrible lies about Jack. Could you have given me $400,000? Elaine asked bluntly. Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Grace's house. Of course we couldn't give you that kind of money, my father replied. But we could have helped with rent and bills, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to commit fraud against your own sister while she was still grieving. I know it was wrong, Elaine admitted. Grace has already made that very clear. She has enough evidence to send me to prison if she wants to. My mother turned to me with alarm. You wouldn't actually press charges against your own sister, would you, Grace? I felt a familiar flash of irritation at her immediate defense of Elaine even now. I could, I said firmly. What she did wasn't just morally wrong. It was criminal fraud and forgery. But she's family and Noah needs his mother. I am family too, I added, my voice rising. Your daughter too. The one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his reputation against false accusations. Where was your concern for me when Elaine was trying to destroy my marriage's memory? My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Of course we care about you, Grace, but Elaine has always needed more help and guidance than you have. And whose fault is that? I asked pointedly. You've been rescuing her from consequences her entire adult life. Maybe if you'd let her face reality occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior. My mother looked stricken. That seems hardly fair, Grace. We've always tried to treat you girls equally. Surprisingly, Elaine shook her head firmly. No, Mom, you haven't. Grace is absolutely right. You always made excuses for my mistakes and found ways to fix my problems. It didn't help me grow up. It just taught me that I could do whatever I wanted without facing consequences. My parents looked shocked at this admission from Elaine herself. For perhaps the first time in her life, she was taking full responsibility instead of blaming others or making excuses. So what happens now? My father asked, looking worried. Is Elaine going to jail? No, I answered. I've decided not to press criminal charges, but only under very specific conditions. I explained the agreement Elaine and I had reached with Mr. Dalton's help. The debt payment, housing assistance, counseling requirements, and employment conditions. That's incredibly generous, my father said, looking relieved. More generous than Elaine deserves after what she did. It's more than I deserve. Elaine agreed quietly. Grace is being kinder to me than I've ever been to her. Well, my mother said, brightening up. This is all working out wonderfully then. Elaine has apologized. Grace is helping with Noah, and we can put this whole ugly business behind us like it never happened. It's not that simple, Mom, I said firmly. Serious damage has been done here. Trust has been broken. Healing will take time if it ever happens completely. And there need to be permanent changes in how this family operates. What kind of changes? She asked, looking worried about losing her fantasy of perfect family unity. For one thing, you both need to stop enabling Elaine's bad choices. No more bailouts, no more excuses, no more rescuing her from the consequences of her decisions. She needs to learn to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that doesn't create dependency. My father nodded slowly. That seems reasonable and probably overdue, and you need to understand that my relationship with Elaine will be different now, I continued. I'll be involved in Noah's life because I love him and want what's best for him. But Elaine and I will not be close sisters the way we once were, at least not for a very long time. My mother looked distressed, but we're family. Families stick together through everything, especially during difficult times like these. Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse and fraud. Mom, I said gently but firmly, what Elaine did was abusive. She tried to use my grief and Jack's death to manipulate and steal from me when I was most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family. The rest of dinner was quiet and subdued, with my parents struggling to process this new reality. When they prepared to leave, my father hugged me tightly and whispered, I'm proud of how you've handled this, Grace. Jack would be proud too. My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the imaginary perfect family relationship she had always pretended we had. Elaine was the last to leave. At the front door, she hesitated before turning to face me one final time. I really am sorry, Grace. Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything over the years, for the constant competition and jealousy, for not being the sister you deserve to have. I know you are, I replied, and I hope the counseling helps you understand why you made these destructive choices. Noah deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? She asked quietly. I considered her question carefully before answering. I don't know, I said truthfully, but I'm willing to see where this new path leads us. For Noah's sake, and maybe someday for ours too. The drive home was silent for my parents, each lost in their own thoughts about how dramatically our family had changed. I knew with certainty that we would never be the same again. But perhaps in time we could become something healthier. A family built on honesty and reality instead of comfortable illusions and enabling patterns. 1 year after Jack's death, I stood in our backyard watching the spring flowers bloom. The tulips Jack had planted the previous fall were magnificent, bright red and yellow against the fresh green grass. I felt that familiar bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he had planted them with hopes of enjoying their beauty with me. So much had changed in that long, difficult year. The trust fund for Noah was established and helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition was improving with treatment, and he was developing into a happy, bright toddler. Elaine had surprised everyone by genuinely embracing all the conditions of our agreement. 8 months of counseling had helped her recognize destructive patterns from childhood. She'd found steady work as a receptionist at a medical clinic, providing stability and good benefits for both her and Noah. Our relationship remained careful but civil. I visited Noah regularly, taking him to the zoo and children's museums. Elaine and I didn't pretend to be close, but we had found a way to coexist peacefully for Noah's benefit. My parents had struggled initially with the new boundaries I had established, especially my mother, who missed her fantasy of perfect sister relationships. But over time, they too had adjusted, learning to support Elaine without enabling her destructive patterns. As for me, the grief counseling group I had joined became a lifeline. 10 strangers brought together by loss had become dear friends, understanding each other in ways that even loving family couldn't. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief and celebrating small victories along the way. 4 months after confronting Elaine, I had established the Jack Henderson Memorial Scholarship for students pursuing education careers. It gave me purpose to see Jack's legacy continuing in the lives of young teachers who shared his passion for helping children learn and grow. Friends had rallied around me in beautiful ways. Jack's teaching colleagues checked on me regularly, including me in social gatherings so I wouldn't become isolated in my grief. My neighbor, Mrs. Torres, visited daily with homemade soup and gentle companionship, never expecting conversation, but always ready to listen if I needed to talk. Standing in Jack's beloved garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything he had taught me, both during our life together and even after he was gone. His careful preparation had protected me when I was most vulnerable. His documented concerns about Elaine had validated my experiences when others tried to dismiss them. His love continued to guide and shield me even from heaven. I had learned that family relationships require honest boundaries to stay healthy, and that sometimes protecting yourself means disappointing people you love. Most importantly, I discovered strength I never knew I possessed, finding ways to honor Jack's memory while building a new life filled with purpose.